Hello and welcome back to Cultivating Candor, a community for honest Christian discussion, content, and commentary. On this episode, Drew and Marv talk about Italian brain rot and how it is integrated into the lives of Gen Z and Gen Alpha. And then they take a serious look at teen vaping and its effect on teens' lives. And hopefully ways that you can tell if your child is vaping. Then we switch from the deconstruction view of Christian thought and we move into a different conversation with Madison Nolte on special needs in the church. How can we help families and kids with special needs? We're glad you joined us for episode 3. This is Cultivating Candor. Let's go. Hello and welcome back to Cultivating Candor. I'm Marv Nelson and this is Drew Walker.
How you doing?
It is good to have you with us again. We have been having a blast researching for today's Ruckus Report.
Oh, we've learned a lot.
Yeah, a lot. Every time we come together, we want to start off with a little bit of comedy at the expense of the younger generations.
Yeah, also at the expense of our brain cells. Because our topic today, I definitely lost at least 7.
At least 7.
Each minute.
Maybe more. We're talking about Italian brain rot. Now, in our Ruckus Report, it gets fun, it gets wild. But this one, I think, is pretty crazy.
This definitely falls under the Ruckus category.
Yes.
It's more so, even in the Minecraft movie, which is pretty great, this is way more Ruckus.
Way more. So, Italian brain rot, for those of you who are not aware, if you're a parent, pastor, youth pastor, or maybe you're already a Generation Z, Gen Alpha person watching this, you know what Italian brain rot is. Mm-hmm. Italian brain rot is all of these crazy memes that are going on online with Italian AI characters. Now, why are they Italian? Because they give them Italian names. But these people who create these random AI characters of a mishmash of all kinds of things, which we'll explain in a little bit, they also have wild Italian names. That's why they're called Italian brain rot. And they just have stupid stuff that happen with these Italian brain rot characters. Now, we had to research all of them. I had to have my iPad. There are so many. There are so many. There are so many Italian brain rot characters. I will highlight my favorites, but oh my gosh. I was like, let me look and see how many there actually are. And there's
so many.
It's bananas. And they're all over. People are just shouting these things out. So, yeah. Well, you know what, Drew? Why don't you open up with your favorite Italian brain rot? And these are all things that kids are watching right now online. This is what they're doing. And, you know, just to be a little bit transparent, when I heard my kids yelling these names out, because they just run around yelling them, and we'll tell you the names, what they're yelling, you might think as a Christian that they're speaking in tongues.
A little bit.
But they're not. It's some crazy stuff. So, Drew, take it away. Tell us your top.
So, my initial thought with Italian brain rot, and I say this just for context, is I thought it was just Italian and English wordplay. So with Romance languages, there's things called cognates. So they're things that sound very much like English language. So one of them is chimpanzini bananini. Did I say that?
Chimpanzini bananini.
And it sounds like what you think it is. It's a chimpanzee mashed with a banana. Then it's just this weird, mashup of the two.
Floating banana.
There's chimpanzee. Another one that's my favorite. One of my favorites, Tralalero Tralala, which is a shark with legs that wears blue Nikes.
Yes.
And then my favorite is Cappuccino Assassino. Assassini Cappuccini. It's just so fun to say. But it's so stupid. And it's just a little cappuccino cup with eyes and 2 swords and a ninja headband because he's a cappuccino assassin.
Yes. And so they take these Italian words, but they mash them together, and then they make them songs, and then they like shout their name. So like there's this bat, tung 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 sahur, right? But the name is like really long, and it's a baseball bat with legs and eyes, and his name literally is tung 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 sahur, right?
Ridiculous.
And so these kids are running around yelling these things out, and I have 2 Gen Alpha and 1 Gen Z in my house, and so I would typically think that the dumb stuff like this would be from my younger kids,
right?
But I didn't find these things out from my younger kids. The first person I heard shouting these was my Generation Z child, who was 16. And I'm thinking, what are you even saying? And he's like, oh, Dad, it's just Italian brain rot.
Don't worry about it.
Don't worry about it. I was like, Italian brain rot? What is that? And so he showed me a couple of the images. My favorite is Chimpanzini Bananini. But there's also probably my second favorite, Bombardiro Crocodilo.
Yo, Bombardiro Crocodilo. Yo, I love that guy.
Now, this guy is a bomber plane with a crocodile head.
It's amazing.
That's it.
So actually, with talking about Bombardino Crocodilo, I learned that there's some lore, the actual backstory behind some of these characters.
Give it to us.
So, two of them I'm going to talk about. There's Bombini Guzzini, who's Bombardino Crocodilo's brother. All right. So this is the wildest one I saw. He was bullied as a duckling, and then later on pulls a Green Goblin / Kirk Connors and injects himself with the serum, transforms into this bomber plane duck. Now, in order to get revenge on those who bullied him, he decides to return and bomb the farm.
Bomb the farm?
It's crazy. Now, somehow his little girlfriend comes back, saves him on some Princess and the Frog type stuff. He transforms back into a duck. Everything's all hunky-dory, except that the farmer's mad that his farm got bombed. So he takes care of the Bombini... How you say it? Bombini Guzzini, takes care of him, and turns him into Sunday dinner. Yeah.
He should have stayed a bomber plane.
It's just ridiculous.
The crazy thing is we need these lists because we can't say them. But our kids, they just shout these things out all of the time.
I have a job. I don't have these names memorized.
I can't.
I apologize.
But it's so ingrained. It's video after video after video after video. And some dude just keeps making up these mishmash of these AI characters. Like, oh, I want to chat GPT. Let me see a shark with legs and blue Nikes. And then he makes up this name. Now, some of them are offensive. There is one that was purposely made in order to... Initially
very, very offensive.
Was to put down God. And, in the language, Allah, that was... Mostly people thought that it was going after all Muslims, but it's just God in general that this person was trying to attack. But, these are just wild. I really encourage you to Google some of these videos.
And there are videos that have, everything translated in English. So maybe not so the names, but, just the backstories, all the other Italian that it goes into. It's here's what he's actually saying. Yeah. One of my favorite ones, which actually made me consider, okay, this isn't as bad as I initially thought, though some are, is Berber Patatin. Stay with me here, all right? If you watch his backstory, it's kind of poetic. It kind of reminds me of the silly creative stuff of childhood rhymes, or I actually thought of Dr. Seuss. You think of Dr. I'm not comparing the two as far as quality, because Dr. Seuss is way better. But if you think about when Dr. Seuss first came out, do you wonder how ridiculous he must have appeared to other parents?
Absolutely.
Because he's just saying wild stuff. And the kids are like, oh, this is fun to say, da-da-da. But, if you look at some of these backstories, it's kind of in the same vein where, yes, there's some ridiculousness, but when you start paying attention to what's actually being said, it's oh, okay, there's some actual story to some of these. And it's just silly. Yeah, some silly kid story kind of stuff, but it's again, not on the same level of quality, but there's some similarities. So it made me wonder, okay, yes, we make fun of it and it's ridiculous, but some stuff's actually okay. That's actually creative, So I don't know. That's just how I felt about it.
Ballerina cappuccina. It's a ballet cup of cappuccino.
Mm-hmm. Again, it's not all in the same quality. Not all of it's good. I'm just saying there is some development. My gosh.
So I can put my list down now because that's all I needed for today. Ruckus Report. Go have fun, but don't spend too much time because you will, as the name is, rot your brain.
Yes. Go read a book after this,
It's called Italian brain rot for a reason. And the internet is full of brain rot. Mm-hmm. Full of it. And your kids are watching it. It's just the truth. They're watching brain rot, and we need to understand what they're saying.
Mm-hmm. So all brain rot in moderation.
Yeah, in moderation. Now, again, I think you and I talked about this. Our generation had their own brain rot.
Oh, yeah.
SpongeBob, for example, was a Nickelodeon show, but it was literally just all brain rot, right? There's nothing good.
It's stupid.
Or redeemable, in my opinion, about SpongeBob.
Save for comedy, that's
there's
no real substance, no real
funny.
Morals taught.
Right.
You just watch it for fun.
Right. Some Nickelodeon shows did have some good lessons, but not that one. So we'll move on as we continue to try and highlight things that are going on with Generation Alpha, Generation Z, because there's so much that happens in their generation now at a quick pace that it's hard to keep track. And so, part of what we want to do in our conversations about church and Christianity is just keep people up to date on some of the trends. Stupid trends, that's the Ruckus Report, but also some serious trends. And the new trend, and it's not necessarily new because it's been happening since 2017.
Yep.
I was looking at some of the statistics on this. It is vaping and teens. Vaping and teens is something that since 2017 has seen a plus 70% increase in usage. High school students are using vapes like you wouldn't believe.
Yeah.
And many parents are unaware of what's going on. Many students are totally aware. I asked my son as I was doing research for this, because I have on the boots, boots on the ground, people that I can ask for research questions. And I said, give me a percentage of how many kids in your high school are vaping. He told me 75%, he thinks.
And that's accurate with the statistics that I've researched as well. So, you just mentioned it.
Yeah, 75% of high school students are vaping. Now, when back in the 2016, 2017, I was hearing about it. We ran a summer day camp, and we had one of our summer day camp high school students get caught with a vape, and they got fired. And so, it wasn't like it's brand new,
right,
like I said, but it's overtaking what's happening in the teens' world. Like, their act of rebellion is vaping in many ways, and they're becoming extremely addicted to it. There's a new Reddit group that has come out in the last year or so that is nicotine support for teens. And these teenagers made up this Reddit thread so that they can help each other walk through their nicotine addiction. So there is a realization that there's a problem and that it's overtaking their wallets and their lives. But, the question we have to ask when we look at something like this, at least that I always ask, is what's driving it? And then my other question is, how in the world are they getting it?
So I actually have some answers to those questions.
I
had the same question. So first and foremost, what's driving it? And I think it's not dissimilar to other things that we've just seen in the world in general, different generations. That teen generation is just they got stresses, they got things that are going on in their life that they're not necessarily sure how best to cope with these different emotions that they're dealing with. Yeah, you can talk about it, but sometimes it's just I don't know even what's going on. I just know that I feel this way. So a lot of it I think does have to do with stress and anxiety and just existing, especially in this generation where kids are so busy, they have a lot going on. It's I understand why kids are stressed entirely. It's got a lot good stuff, but still a lot. And then another thing that I've at least understood was coming from community. There's an element of my group of friends, this is what we do. And so, those two things, at least from what I've been able to see, seem to be the driving factors behind getting into it. And I get it. It's obviously not something I condone, but I understand where it's coming from. And how they're getting it, that was one of the big questions for me. What it seems to be is just kind of like teens with alcohol. They know somebody who can access it, so they get it from them. They buy it from kind of like a middleman, someone who is old enough to purchase these things legally, and then they run their own little business, their own little game, and then teens get access to it, and it just kind of trickles down from there. So you see kids younger than younger getting addicted to stuff. Growing up, I'm sure you've heard of kids who said they started smoking 10, 11, 12, 13. And it's it's not new, but it's new. You know what I mean? It's a new method for sort of the same stuff you see in every day. Nothing new under the sun kind of thing.
Yeah.
But, yeah, those are really the two big questions that I had that I was able to find answers on. It seems like it's just the same type of reasons, just a different method of dealing with them.
Yeah, the structure of getting access to it is similar to dealership with drugs, right? You find someone who's going to go buy it for you, and they know where to buy it cheap. They sell it more expensive to you, and if you're the high schooler who has the hookup with the dealer, then you probably end up dealing and selling it. Right. So some of these kids are buying a vape that would cost $10 for $30, $40 just because they want to get their hands on it.
Right.
And so the access is understandable, but also where's the oversight in what's happening? And I think you're dead on. Some of the things we've been talking about purposefully as we are moving into this discussion on Generation Z through each episode is the mental health aspect. There is this dopamine rush that kids are trying to receive.
Right.
The reality is that the percentage of sex is a little bit less than it was in millennials' generation, but the percentage of vaping is higher.
Right. Similar with cigarettes. The percentage of cigarette sales and like cigarette usage among teens is lower, technically. But, the usage of vapes and stuff is higher. It's been increasing.
Yeah, I mean, because vapes technically are not tobacco.
Right.
It's nicotine salts that are melted down, or it's oils that are infused with nicotine that they're getting a hold of.
Scientifically, it is safer because there are less cancerous toxins in vapes than you would see in cigarettes. Doesn't make it safe, but technically safer if that's your barometer, if that's what you're looking at.
Yeah, and tobacco companies are hating it.
Oh, yeah.
They are losing money hand over fist on it. And, once you can get a teen hooked on something, you're making money on a long run. Another thing that goes along with this, which is not nearly as high of a percentage of usage, but is nicotine pouches. Things like Zyn or whatever that is, because those are, you can hide them as if you're not actually using them. So that's becoming highly more popular because they can tuck them in their mouth and it doesn't look like they're chewing on anything.
Right, they're just chilling.
Yeah, and it doesn't look like tobacco. They don't have to spit. They can swallow it, and they don't have a pen in their mouth. So as we see these things get to start getting locked down on vaping, you're going to see a lot more of that. This is what the CDC was saying, that these pouches are going to increase in usage, and they have similar amounts of milligrams of nicotine that they have within them. But I mean, the mental health can't be avoided in this discussion. I did not find any research that ties high tobacco use to depression, but I would venture to say that they're probably linked. That you could look at someone who's wrestling with something and they're trying to escape it through an addiction. It's any type of thing. What do you think about mental health's in this generation contributing to nicotine use?
Yeah, so I think when we talked a little bit ago about anxiety and like community and stuff, there was that rise of sort of a need to go to something like therapy or feelings of loneliness, because when we talked about social media, we have access to each other without needing to have a face-to-face conversation. That interaction of just a one-on-one kind of eye-to-eye conversation, that skill is declining. And so you're stuck here with all these emotions. You don't know how to express them. You don't know who to talk to or even how to express what you're dealing with. And so now it's just like, well, I got to deal with it somehow. This is a quick fix. It's easy, convenient, whether it be the vape, the nicotine pouch, whatever the case is. It's a quick way to deal with these feelings, help me to feel better. But like the Bible says, it's a fleeting pleasure. So obviously you're going to keep coming back to it as these feelings of stress go on, just because you're living life. So, and it may be anxiety, may be depression. I'm not entirely sure. Like you said, you have a direct contact to someone who's facing this kind of stuff every day. My kids are 3 and 1. So,
I hope the preschool doesn't have 3-year-olds vaping. That'd be a mess.
Yeah, her biggest depression is, Dad said I can't watch this TV show until after dinner.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But I think those things, at least that's how it connects in my mind. It's like, okay, well, you're dealing with this stuff. You don't know who to talk to. Here's a quick way to deal with it. So it just, I don't know, it just all seems to connect to me.
Yeah. Now, you're not a parent of a teen yet, Drew, but you've worked with teenagers. I've worked with teenagers and have been a parent of a teen for 3 years. Now I have 2 of them. But one of the things that I've noticed about this type of situation is that kids are afraid to talk to their parents about them, and so they live in their addiction because of fear of what will happen with their parents. And so they don't bring them up. I'm not saying that I would not discipline my child.
It's a tough balance to walk. It really is.
If something of this were discovered. But I always tell my kids, like, it's going to go better for you if you confess and bring it to me first than if you get caught.
Right.
And I try to have, and I don't always succeed at this. My kid would probably tell you, he doesn't succeed at this at all. But I try to keep open dialogue. Yeah. Where I ask those questions, like when I ask him about vaping, hey, have you tried it? And he said no, because he knows how addictive and stupid it can be. But, the reality is that there are lots of kids, 75% of kids in his school, he thinks. But there's definitely a stat that says that 78% of kids in high school have at least tried vaping. So having that discussion with your kids is good. And as youth pastors, youth leaders, or even just pastors who interact with your teenagers, you can ask these questions in a non-judgmental, angry, well, if you tell me you're going to give, I'm going to blow you up type of attitude. But just asking those questions. And maybe you start with the question, how many kids in your school do you think, percentage-wise, are
that's where you kind of get into the conversation.
Yeah, but I mean, there are signs that you could tell. I think it was the CDC website, and we'll put these links even to the Crazy Ruckus report in the show notes.
We got the research,
so you can take a look for yourself. But there's this research that has been done that gives the signs to know whether your teen is or not vaping, and they're pretty significant. They're pretty specific as well. So there's about 9 of them, and I think they said if you have more than 5, then you might want to ask the question, are you vaping? I think it's good. You monitor your kids. Sometimes parents don't even know their kids enough to know if these signs are there, which I encourage you as parents, get invested, get involved in your kids' lives to see these things, to check these things out, to get connected with your kids and ask good questions. So as a former youth pastor, what are your thoughts on creating a dialogue with your kids on something like that?
Yeah, I know for our youth group, what we did for about a year, actually, and this was our main way of kind of navigating lessons of what we talked about. I had this, and it's obviously going to work differently in a home, but I had this box where it's like, hey, if you have an anonymous question, something you just want to talk about, put it in the box. I'm not going to sit here and try to figure out who said it. We'll just talk about it, see what the Bible says about it, And it was really beneficial. We had some heavy conversations, some lighthearted conversations, but it was really good for the kids to have an avenue of opening up and expressing themselves. And my boss had talked about some research he was doing. He's like, when we're in church, a lot of times these lessons that we're doing are answering questions that our kids aren't asking. So learning kind of what are those questions your kid is asking? What are the things that are going on in their mind? What are the things that they're dealing with, that they're wrestling with, and walking through it with them. And like I said, something like, vaping, which is, I think it is a disciplinary type of thing. Like, if something's going on, like, you should probably try to stop your kid from doing this or help them out.
Not to mention it's illegal.
Right. But at the same time, it's like, okay, how do we navigate this conversation where you feel open enough to talk to me about, like, hey, Dad, this is what I'm this is what I'm dealing with. This is what, I'm facing right now. We can warn them, hey, here are the dangers. This is not something you should be doing. But also, them not feel, if I say this to Dad, he's immediately going to just, crack down the way. And I don't have the answers. Like I said, I got a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old. It's a hard balance to walk, but there's trying to figure out a middle ground there.
Yeah. I think having that open dialogue and trying to be reasonable in those moments. A lot of vaping happens because friends are like, hey, I tried this, why don't you try it?
Right.
And then you're like, ooh, I like that. And then you find yourself trying to get more and more and more of it. It could be the depressive piece that's pushing you to it. There's all kinds of things that we talked about earlier in the show that are driving teens to usage of nicotine. But it really, really is important for us as parents and those who work with teens or, find ourselves among them to have an open heart to hear. And my first reaction, I won't lie, is to be like, I feel like
it's an understandable reaction. I get that.
Yeah, but there still needs to be that sense of, I'm willing to listen and ask the other questions surrounding it. Okay, you're doing this thing. Why? When did you start? How did it come about? And what can we do to help you get out of this situation?
And I think that's a big part of it. It's like, what can I do to help? Is there a way I can help? Even if you don't have the answers, even if your kid doesn't have the answers, I think just the willingness to want to help makes a big difference. It's like, okay, so Mom and Dad are on my side here. They're for my good. They want me to benefit. They want to benefit me through all this. It's not like they're just trying to be these authoritarians. Is that how you say that?
Authoritarian, yeah.
Yeah. It's like they're not trying to be these like overlord kind of things. It's like, no, they are curious and they want to help me, but there's a danger that I'm sitting in, and they're not just out to get me kind of thing. Yeah. And again, it's a tough balance to walk. I know I don't have the answers, but I see that if there's a solution there, this is kind of what it's going to be centered around.
Yeah, because if they're afraid to come to you, they'll hide it, and they'll hide it, and they'll hide it, and they'll hide it. And the worst thing to have a kid struggle with is hiding something,
Right.
as well as just living in that sin. I mean, secrets. There's this statement about secrets that we're only as sick as the secrets that we keep, and we are training our kids to keep secrets because we can't respond well, and that hinders dialogue and relationship and growth, and hinders the ability of our teens to feel like they can confess their sins to us, and that we can be there to walk alongside them. These are tough discussions. It's never easy. I really appreciate your time talking about this. Hopefully you're engaging with this. You'll click on some of the show notes and go through what we've been talking about. Check these stats out yourself, and maybe learn some of the chimpanzini benanini stuff so you can have a funny dialogue with your children. But I will say, you walk into a room and you shout one of those Italian brain rot memes, they will look at you like you are crazy. But that look for me as a dad, that look for me as a dad is all worth it. I try to purposely be cringy, as they say, because
You would.
Yeah, I would. It's super fun. So parents, be cringy, have fun once in a while. It's okay. I don't know if you know this, but do you remember Madison from Pittsburgh? Madison Hayestek?
Yes.
Yeah, well, we're having her. That's not her last name anymore. But we're having Madison on. She's a TikTok star now. She's got over 30,000 followers. And it's all about following her and her son's journey. Her son has autism, and it is a difficult journey as a mom with kids. And she just gives her whole journey on her TikTok. Wow. And I'm going to interview her and ask her about how can the church walk alongside families, single moms, and families in general that have kids with special needs. I think it's one of those areas of the church that we don't do well at. And I think giving a window into a mother's perspective is going to be really good. So you want to stay tuned and check out my interview with TikTok star Madison, who was also one of my middle school students when I was a pastor. So it's kind of cool to have this reciprocal relationship with her.
Full circle.
Full circle thing. So stay tuned for that. We thank you so much for joining us for episode 3 on Cultivating Candor. Until next time, I'm Marv.
I'm Drew.
And we'll see you later. Welcome back to Cultivating Candor, a community for honest Christian discussion, content, and commentary. I am the host, Marv Nelson, and today we have a special guest. I call her a TikTok star. She is a friend of mine, and she was a former student when I was a middle school youth pastor. She was in the middle school ministry. Her name is Madison Nolte. Madison is a mom of 5, including 3 kids on the autism spectrum, each with their own brand of chaos and brilliance. She's powered by coffee, aren't we all? Sarcasm and the deep primal urge to be left alone in her car for 5 minutes that are uninterrupted. Her life is a crash course in advocacy, improvisation, and unconditional love with a side of dark humor. So, Madison, thank you for being here with us, and it is a pleasure to have you.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah. So what we do on this show, the last couple of episodes have been about deconstructing faith. We've had 2 different people, one from the TikTok world like yourself, and then another who is an author, talk about deconstructing their faith. But it's not just about that. We want to get stories of faith all across the board. And the goal is to help church see different areas of life that maybe we're missing. We don't know how to talk to those who are deconstructing their faith. We don't know what they're wrestling with. But you come from a different world in what you wrestle with and how you are navigating life. You grew up in the church. I was your youth pastor. You've been on quite a journey for your life, starting when you were young, not just when you were in your teens, but way younger than that. It's been a journey for you. Now, with a kid with special needs, this is your world right now. And it will be for the rest of your life, most likely, with Siler. But I want to really ask you some questions about that world and ask some questions about the church. But my first question for you, just so people can get to know you, is can you share your journey, especially as it pertains to Siler and your other children?
Yeah, so this is the one that It's always so hard to even answer um, about my life in general because it's really been, like you said, quite the journey. I did grow up in the church. I've gone to church for as long as I could remember, and we were at church several times a week. So if there was kids clubs on Wednesdays, we were there, and if there was a volunteer opportunity, we were there. We were very much so involved from as far back as I can remember. My mother passed away whenever I was pretty young. She was also young herself. She was 32 years old. And that's whenever, the church really did come around us and they were very supportive, but we became very well known in the church because we were basically the kids. My mom had 7 kids. So it was a very big story that she had lost her life and we were there with my dad and, all just there trying to survive basically afterwards. So we became, pretty well known within the church at that point. And that was life. My upbringing after my mom passing away was not the greatest ever. There was a lot of struggle and trauma within there, and ultimately led me to getting pregnant whenever I was only 15 years old. That is when I had my first child, and that's really kind of um, started out, set the tone for the rest of everything. It's been chaotic since then. Um, and I've just been really trying to find our place in the world. Since then, I've had several more kids. I do have 5 kids now. I feel like I'm finally getting the hang of it after 5. And as you said, I have 3 kids on the spectrum, and the youngest one on the spectrum, he does have very high support needs, so he does require 24/7 full support, and that has been really a change to anything and everything I've ever known. So that's really where we're at now. That's where my brain is at all times, and working through that.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks for sharing a little bit of your journey. I was there for a little bit of it. I do remember when your mom had passed, and it did it did affect a lot of people. And you guys had to navigate some really difficult waters. And for what it's worth, I'm proud of you as to where you are now, and just seeing what you have been doing and encouraging other people. And you have been sharing your journey pretty publicly on TikTok. I think you have close to 27,000 followers at this point, which is a significant number. I call you a TikTok star because after 10,000, you're up there. I have 386, so it's I've got nothing on you in that. Um, but why, with your popularity on TikTok, why do you think that is? And how has your story impacted others as you've been honestly sharing your life with Siler?
Yeah, so I think autism in general, right now especially, is a hot topic in the world. But I think it's funny because I also used to only have 380 some followers, and it just one day we kind of blew up, and it was a video that I posted about Siler because one of the most common misconceptions that people have um, with autism is not with autism in general, but like somebody like Siler. So my son Siler, he is what you would consider non-speaking. But if you were to see Siler, you would say, "Wow, he has so many words. What do you mean he doesn't speak?" But it's
Mhm.
because he has quite the vocabulary, but he can't actually use that to communicate verbally. So he might just say whatever is in his brain at any point in time. Usually it involves listing off animals. He loves the alphabet, so he will just go through all day long. A, anteater. B, bear. And that's probably 50% of our day. But people don't always realize they might see that. And one of my biggest frustrations is telling people, he cannot speak to you. He can say that, and people, they just don't grasp it. So I was showing a video of me talking to Siler and him responding, but responding with things that didn't make sense whatsoever. That
Mhm.
video is the one that really catapulted us and helped us gain such a huge following because it resonated with so many people. Because they were able to say, "Hey, my kid does that too. I didn't realize that was a thing. I didn't realize there was a term for this." So it resonated with parents that have kids that are similar. And honestly, I've never met another kid that had that either. So it was so nice to connect with people that also understood where we were coming from. And then it also connected with people that don't have kids that are autistic and that were able to say, like, "Wow, I never knew that was a thing. Thanks for letting me know." That's what really put us into the following we are now. I used to joke like I would post stuff before for my 300 little followers and just throw it out there into the internet world. Just it was almost a therapy for me at that point. So that's where we started with it. But I am glad as to where we are now, and knowing that we don't have the most massive reach out there, but it's still enough to make me feel good about when I'm putting things out there that I'm able to help people not feel so alone, and also help people that might not know otherwise about what autism can look like.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the common misconception of non-speaking is the nonverbal, where they can't talk, and you're like, "Well, hold on." So
Right,
that's a really good distinction to know. It's not one that I knew prior to watching some of your TikTok videos either. My misconception was that it was nonverbal and that they couldn't have words.
right.
Um, so that was really helpful, and like, oh, this is interesting. I I know I saw one that I think you recently posted where you were talking and he just shouted sperm whale really loud.
That's
And,
his word.
you know, I was just like, that's interesting,
Yeah,
to try and navigate and communicate with him. Um, I think that what you're doing is excellent, and how you're approaching it, like I've said before, I just really appreciate the honesty and the candor in that. It can't be easy sometimes, especially you recently posted one where he had hurt you, and those can be you could be afraid to post those things. um, and so I'm glad you're putting it out there and it's resonating with people. And to that end of resonating with people, I have discovered as a pastor that churches don't really do well at helping special need kids or families. There's been little focus on ministering to families and especially to the kids themselves. Kids that even if they are non-speaking, they need ministry too.
mhm,
Um, and that's something we have someone on our staff who worked with our children's ministry and now does our vacation Bible school. Her son is nonverbal, and learning his story and her story of how they got there, and how little the church has helped. Ours has definitely stepped up its game because we've seen the need. But when you think about this, what can the church do to help parents in your situation? And then I have a couple other follow-up questions.
yeah. So I think that for us, there's many places that will say that they have programs for special needs kids and for autistic kids, but from my experience, a lot of times that comes with kids that maybe have some lower support needs, kids that maybe might struggle socially more, so they have a little extra support or help for that, or they know, okay, well, maybe these kids don't like loud noises so much, so we can cater towards that. There's little bits and pieces, but I think that my big struggles has been that there's not many resources or support for people that have kids with the higher support needs, because I think that a lot of people think um, that they're not paying attention or listening, or a lot of it's just them trying to take care of them, and they're not actually getting anything Jesus related across to them, and it's just not as important because they think they're kind of in their own world doing their own thing, and maybe they're not listening at all. But from my experience with Siler is he might be spouting off sperm whale, but I guarantee you he's listening to every word that's being said, and he remembers every part of it, even if he's not giving you that feedback to let you know he's acknowledging it. He is. And I think it's that way for most kids. So, I think that that's been our big issue, is that it's a very one size fits all, when realistically, especially for higher support needs, that's not the case. But I mean, even for lower support needs, every kid is different. And I think the big mistake is not tailoring it to each kid, having just one set program and this is how we do things. But that's not really actually supporting the kids or their families.
Yeah. Yeah, one of the things that I discovered with our staff member who has a nonverbal autistic child was that because there's not a lot of help, her son can't be in the service. He does a lot of loud squeaking noises. He has to play with something tactily that makes noise. And so she said most families with kids with autism or special needs just don't go to church anymore,
Mhm.
because there's just nothing for them. So, I like your idea of tailoring specifically to each child, knowing what they need, being aware of their capabilities, and their cognitive abilities to understand, and knowing that Dylan, her son, does catch everything, like you said, Siler does. That's important. Teach them. Find a way to connect with them where if they're playing with something, that doesn't mean they're not listening. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So that's been something that's been interesting for me. So I appreciate that perspective. When you think about where you're at in your life, you said you're 32. You're a single mom working, hard on just raising a kid in this situation. What do you specifically need from a church body? Hearing your story of what you need might help those who are listening to see, oh, wow, they do need something different for every family. So what do you need?
So I think that one, it's been great for Sundays. We go to a church that is very supportive. They have an autism ministry program, and they have really gone above and beyond to build that out. From having, they try to bring Siler into the Sunday school, and they have a one-on-one person with him. And the nice thing is they have multiple people that are trained to be able to do it. So you might not get the same person every week, but he has somebody that is able to be with him, next to him, so that if he needs something, he knows he has a go-to. And they're also able to make sure that everybody's having a good time. And such, and that's great. They also, if he's not having a good time, they have a area for him separate, so that if it is too overwhelming, stressed out, he's not pressured and has to stay in there because it's Sunday school. They are able to recognize, like, okay, he needs a break, we're going to take him for a break now. And for me as a parent, the peace of mind of that is great. Like, I'm able to go and sit in service, and I have zero stresses as to, like, is Siler going to be okay. And that's huge for me. Previously, it used to be that I would have to take Siler, and if I were to take him, it was something that I had to be with him in Sunday school, and then I wasn't going to church because I'm there with him in Sunday school.
Yeah.
Or I would be in, like, the nursing mother's room, basically, that maybe had like a speaker of what was going on, but I still was paying attention to him, paying attention, and it just wasn't really great. I couldn't really get what I needed out of it because there was just so much going on. So Sundays have been great. Another thing though that has been a huge help is, I am a single mom of five. Siler does have um, a minimal relationship with his dad, so it is primarily me that is taking care of him. And because of his needs, there's really not anybody else that can take care of him or knows how to. And so that leads me to getting zero breaks, zero help. And, the church I go to now has at least quarterly nights, like parents' night out, where they call it, and where they have the autism ministry. They have people that are able to do that, so we can participate in those things. Typically, that's something that's not catered to, and it's been nice because they've been able to align it with other things within the church. So, like, if they're having a Sunday night of worship, like a women's worship, I've been able to attend that because they have the autism ministry there. It's not just for parents of the typical kids, it's the ones that also have special needs kids that can absolutely use that respite, and be able to be involved with church things again. I felt like at the bare minimum, maybe we can get Sundays in before, and that was hit or miss. But now it feels nice to know, like, no, we could be fully involved with them. And I know they're responsive of, even if there were something going on at the church that maybe that they didn't have something set up. I feel comfortable enough to say, like, hey, is there anybody that's going to be able to be around for this, that maybe I could be able to participate in this as well. They're very responsive to it. It feels good being somewhere that understands what you're going through, what your kid goes through, and is genuinely there to try to help you through it, however they can.
Man, that is so good. That respite night, that idea, I might steal it because that's really good. Offering families with kids with special needs that respite. Um, and with that, when you first started at your current church with that ministry, were you kind of timid to start because you know where Siler's at and we're afraid, like, I don't know if they can handle his level. Were you timid about it?
I mean, many times it it really keeps me held back, nervous to do things because, a lot of people might say, like, oh, yeah, we take care of autistic kids. But then there's like, but do you take care of my autistic kid? Because I'm going to be honest, he might try to bite somebody. And can you handle that? Like, I mean, I don't want to like set off all the alarms before we even get there, but it is a very big fear for me. I love that Tyler can go do things, but I don't want other kids to accidentally get hurt in the process either. I mean, I understand there's a balance there. So it does make you very nervous to go into things. And, from the get go, I will say, like, their process to even get started, I felt very good from the beginning. They really took the time to learn us, learn what we were looking for. I met with them before we ever went to a Sunday service. I met with them in the middle of the week to talk about Siler's needs and where he's at, and what they can do for him and what they want to help out with. So I felt really comfortable from the get go getting that, because it wasn't like you just show up on a Sunday morning and they're like, yep, we got it, go ahead. I got to really know them and learn what they're doing, and that was helpful. And then even the guilt that went along, the first time I did a respite night, like, I felt really anxious about doing that because, you don't want to feel like you're just handing your kid off. And, they had something going on at the church that night, which I was going to participate in, but it was also very, like, no stress. Like, if you want to go out and just go out to eat by yourself for 2 hours, you do that. Like, you do what you need to do during this time, and don't feel like obligated that you have to even do something at the church if you don't want to. Like, you take the time for you, and it really made a big difference. It was nice. I cannot say enough great things about how much that has helped me mentally, just having that.
That's so awesome. And I was going to ask you how you got over your timidity with it, but you answered that they met with you ahead of time. They took notes, they understood who Siler was, who you were, what his needs were, and were able to tailor to that and say, yes, we can tailor to that. Wow,
Mhm.
that's really cool. I can't think of another church that I know of that's been doing that for families and moms in your situation, which leads me to ask the question. You may or may not have the answer, but because you've grown up in the church and you've seen all kinds of different churches and how they function and operate, why do you think the church does a poor job at helping families with special needs kids, especially ones that are where Siler's at?
So one of my big traumas with growing up, one of my big religious traumas with growing up, is how, my dad in particular really viewed kids and their relationship with their parents and how they had to behave and how they had to act. And, you know, I could go down literally anything involved in our house would turn back to, like, well, this is what it says in the Bible. From it's a running joke with my siblings as to, like, if you left your socks on the ground, that, you can guarantee that you're going to be sitting at the table, the Bible is going to be pulled out, and it was going to relate all back to, and this is why you can't do this because the Bible says so. And it was very stressful growing up. I understand the importance of, wanting your kids to grow up in the right way, and you want your kids to grow up with a relationship where they have a good respect for their parents. But it was used almost as like a fear tactic for me growing up. And so that's something that I've always never wanted to do for my kids. But that's also kind of, the church did that, I would say, but not in the same extreme, but very much so. I will always go back to remembering about how it was so important to listen to your parents, obey your parents. And um, I think that a lot of times people don't realize that, like, there are just some kids that don't have that same ability. Siler listens to me maybe only 5% of the time, but it's not because he's a bad kid or he doesn't want to listen to me or he's trying to be defiant. It's just that his brain works totally different than another kid's does. So um, that's a lot of the worry when it comes to putting him in the care of other people, is I don't want people to think that he's just not listening just to not listen or being bad. And I think that's been from my own experience where a lot of the disconnect is that, some kids just aren't going to learn that. Some kids, you are going to just be having to really monitor them and take care of them and kind of help guide them where they're going. It's not going to be that you're going to be able to sit them down and have them do certain things and act a certain way. And I think that that's where a lot of people miss out and don't realize.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's good. That's really good. Just diagnosing some of the issues, I think, is helpful for us to actually correct it. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Which is really good. One of the things in my connection with our staff member who has um, an autistic child is that it's not just ministering to the families, but her desire is that her kid is ministered to,
Mhm.
so that there's that ministry to the child. It's not just this daycare type of thing, like let's put him in a room and deal with him until church is over. Because sometimes you can get that,
Yeah.
with the special needs rooms, is just put the kid in here and wait till it's over. But
Right.
what can churches or even just Christians in general do to minister to these kids with special needs that are lower functioning? Because I think maybe that's a question that people are asking. Well, how can I love on a kid like this that I don't know, or how can I come alongside and minister to this kid?
I think it's a lot about just, even if you're not getting the feedback from it, doesn't mean that you can't be talking about it. You can't relate it to any situation going on. And using every situation that's happening. It's about being creative. Siler um, may not give you a response back of things, but like he loves animals so much that he connects with the story of Noah's Ark because of the animals going on the boat, and able being able to tailor that to what he's in that moment as to bring it back to God and how that relates to things. And it's interesting because growing up, one of the questions that we often had, I think we like to stump our mom with questions, but it was always, what happens about the people that are, living in a random tribe in Africa and they never hear about Jesus? What happens to them? Are they all going to hell? And it was always those goofy things that I honestly feel bad now for the questions that we asked her mother. But I remember that also being a question like, what about people that don't understand? What if they don't? What happens to them? And that's something that I always come back to now because I always think like, wow, Siler probably will never be able to actually do the prayer of accepting Jesus into his heart. And so what happens to him then?
Yeah.
And now as a parent, I realize like, all I can do for him is make sure that he grows up, that he's around it and that he's hearing it, and we are doing everything we can for him. And maybe he will never get to the point where he can physically verbally say it, but I have to believe that God's not just gonna oust him because he can't say the words for it.
Yeah.
I think that it's still going in his head, and so we just try to expose him to it as much as possible. And same with Sunday school. If he has a rough time initially when they're just playing and they take him out of the room, that doesn't mean that whenever they are doing their little story time that they don't try to see if maybe Siler does want to walk back in there. And if he doesn't, that's okay because they can do their own adaptive lesson with Siler on their own one-on-one. So again, maybe he doesn't seem like he's paying attention or listening to it, but I have to believe that as long as we're trying to just get it out there and verbalize it as much as we can, he is still listening to it and understanding it.
That's good. That's good. Yeah, I think that's really great. I mean, your question of what's going to happen to him because he can't say the prayer, man, I think that's really, I never would have thought about that, just because I'm not in your situation. um that's just knowing what you're wrestling with, I think is good. And yeah, I think you're dead on. I mean, it's like the question of when a baby dies, where do they go, kind of thing. But I really appreciate, you sharing that with us and giving us opportunities to learn how we can minister to you and your kiddo. When I've been reading some books on neurodiversity, one of the books I read was written by someone who was autistic with neurodiversity, and he said that as a kid it was difficult because kids were trained to have that child conform to them, the normal kids, if you will. And so there was this forced conformity, trying to put a child like Siler, or maybe even like your older kid who's a little bit more higher functioning, trying to force them into the box of normal rather than the opposite, where we're training other kids how to adapt themselves to the child that is in the room. So, my question is, what if other children were taught to understand and walk alongside the special needs kid instead of the opposite? And then how would that be helpful?
So I think that for one, I have kind of I think there's a balance there, right? So, with Siler, I think that it's great that he can be alongside other kids. Admittedly, Siler is not a kid person. He doesn't like kids very much. So sometimes it's hard for that to happen. And I think that neurotypical kids also deserve to have a good experience in things. And, maybe having somebody like Siler all the time 24/7 might not be the right fit for anything either. But I do think that um, the world could definitely be better if we were teaching our more typical kids that there is kids out there that aren't just like them. There are different children out there. I think that starts with even just the language that you use around them. One of my biggest pet peeves is whenever I hear people that might say, "Oh, there's just something wrong with him. Don't worry," because like
Mm.
autism isn't the greatest thing ever. Obviously there's a difference there, but that doesn't mean there's something inherently wrong with him or he just has problems. Yes, his brain works a little bit differently. And, it's times like that that I think, wow, parents really could use that as a moment to say, like, some kids just need to jump up and down when they're happy. Some kids just, they can't use the words and they might use other ways to explain things. And I really wish that I could just get the message out there to all the parents. Like use those moments as ways to really teach your kids, because I mean what you're teaching your kids at that young age really shapes what they believe and understand as they grow up. And it could make the world totally different in 20 years from now if we're teaching our typical kids that there are kids that communicate differently and function a little bit differently than them, and that doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with it. It just means that it's different than how you do things. So yeah, I think it would be great. It would be awesome if we really were to use that approach more often.
Mm.
But I think that I think we're getting better at it. But I think historically speaking, what tended to happen is kids like Siler were just kind of put away. Like whether the parents just didn't take them out in the world, which I get because that's a stressful time. But
Mhm.
also, if you did take them out in the world, they were just kind of segregated off and didn't even make the attempts. I could see, Siler is more aggressive, so maybe the first time he would have bitten somebody would have been okay. That's the last time we're ever bringing him around. Whereas the approach now being like, okay, we can see this happened because of this and the cause and effects of it, and say, okay, we're going to try this again, and this time we're going to do this in place to make sure everything, goes smoother. So I think just doing that would make a world of difference for sure.
Yeah, so like normalizing it essentially. And that's what I love about your TikTok. I think I told you before we even started recording is that you're normalizing it for people, letting them see, that neurodiversity is normal. It's something that does happen and is real. It doesn't lessen a child, it doesn't make them less important. Um and I think that's so good that people can see stories like yours and have an understanding of wanting to walk alongside rather than ostracizing. I think I think of the typical, you're in a shopping store and you see a kid who has a fit and then everyone's just walking around, they're like, "Oh my gosh." And I could assume in those moments you feel so judged. And that's not the way the world should function in that process. So I really appreciate your answer to that. You've
I think
answered. Oh, go
I
ahead.
think
Sorry.
in the middle, I wanted to on the shopping comments. That is one of the times, in the very beginning, early on, and this is when Siler was younger. I will say he was around 2, when those moments would happen. I think I felt so anxious and nervous about it. Um, I will say, as Siler's gotten older and his autism is more apparent, people kind of are just like, not even so much judging, but just like, I don't even know what's going on over there, so I'll mind my business. But the times that almost are um, more of a moment for me is like, again, Siler's big word right now is sperm whale. We were in Walmart the other day and we're walking down the aisles and he just sperm whale. And you could just see people. And learning to adjust my own self of being like, yep, sperm whale, like you got it. If we're just gonna go back and forth saying that, it's helped me mentally as well because um, people do look at it like, what the heck is going on over there? But I have already resolved with myself that it is better that I embrace it. Like this is our life. This is what it is. And if this is going to be the only experience people are going to see of it, I'm going to make sure it's not me saying like to be quiet or don't say that or because
Yeah.
it's our life. It is what it is, and maybe this is the only exposure that people will get from it. So it is what it is. Sometimes people will ask questions or say things, sometimes not. But we're just
Yeah.
trying to get through Walmart, just the same.
I would almost be tempted. You know my personality. I would probably just scream it back and just
Yeah,
yell it
right. And some do, and it's great. Like, and honestly, it Siler's face lights up when people understand him on that level. I think most people really, whenever they do, because I try to explain to people because sometimes they will try to start talking to him. They'll say, "Oh, he's non-speaking. He probably won't respond back in a certain way." And some people are convinced that he will respond back in a certain way. Some people are just like, "Oh, okay." And
like his
um,
mom doesn't know.
right, like I'm just lying. I mean, honestly, one time I had one very well intentioned old guy, but he was going to give Siler $5, and he just wanted him to say something. I was like, he's not going to, and he goes, oh, he will. I'm like, he has zero. He doesn't care about the money. Honestly, he doesn't get it. He's not
Yeah.
going to say anything even for the $5 bribe here. But if you want to give me $5, like I'll say it.
I'll take that brother. Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I'll do it. But the people don't get it. But I've really like to me that's almost one of the ways that I do help advocate for him is that I do take him out. We do these things, and he is free to be his self in it. And that's if he's in a happy moment or if he's in a not so happy moment. You'll see me in the store trying to just talk through it with him, regulate. And if he's having a hard time with it, that's not my favorite time to be out and about, but we work through it because that's real life. That's what we have to do. So if that's what people are seeing, again, I think that if anything, it opens people's eyes to something that maybe they haven't seen before. So maybe they go home and they think about it a little more, or Google something. I don't know. But to me, that's part of the advocacy, honestly, is
Yeah.
continuing on with our life.
No, that's good. So I have another question for you. I think you've answered this somewhat from what your church does, but how have you personally been ministered to by believers? Even outside of the church that you're a part of. Has that been a part of your life where other believers have come alongside and ministered to you?
I think one of the most well-intentioned things that I hear often from everybody is, "Oh, I'm praying for you," which is great. We love that. But it's also I feel like that's the default because some people really just don't know what to do or what to say. And I'm very thankful though there are some people that have come up and just taken the initiative of like, what can I do? I might not know how to help out with Siler, or I understand that he only wants to be with you, but is there other things that I could do to help you out? And that's meant the world because, having Siler all the time, there's some things I can't do. One of the big struggles last year is that my daughter wanted to do gymnastics, but she is still young enough that you have to go and sit there while she does gymnastics. But because of Siler, that was just not something that I was able to do. Siler was not. It would have been bad on many levels, whether it's a matter of Siler not wanting to sit there for an hour, and then I don't want my daughter to feel just frustrated with all that comes along with that. It was something that wasn't really on the table. I wasn't able to figure out how we were going to do that. And I had somebody say, well, you know what? Let me take her to gymnastics every week and I'll sit there for the hour while she does it. And it was so nice to be able to have something just as simple as that. I felt less guilty about, her not being able to do the gymnastics. I was so happy she was able to do that and experience that. And it took the stress of, not having to manage Siler around all of that. So it's little things like that, I understand that not everybody's going to be able to handle a child like Siler. I'm 100%. I don't fault anybody for it. I would have never thought that I could do this 5 years ago. But it's a learned thing. But that's really been helpful is the people that step up in other ways. Maybe you don't know all the answers, but you're still able to do something to help out. So that's been huge.
Yeah, no, that's great. I'm glad that you have people in your life that are doing that for you and with you. The other side of the coin is that people help, but people can also hurt, and then that can hinder our walk with Jesus. Have you had any you know s- areas of pain that have happened that people have caused hurt that has kind of maybe hindered your walk with Jesus, maybe not? And the reason I ask this question is not to like get into your pain. But to just give people an image of what not to do with someone in your situation, where you're at in life.
Yeah, so I felt it way more with my older child that has autism because he is higher functioning, and I think that um, that was where people felt more okay with giving suggestions as to like, have you tried this or maybe do this instead. And not only that, but looking at it as like a parenting point of view as to maybe you're not parenting the right way, or you need to discipline a little bit more. With Siler, I think that people can recognize that there's a lot of struggles there, so many times they're just like, they stay out of it all the way, or their suggestions so out there that it's just like, okay, thank you so much. We'll try that. I didn't think about bathing him in bentonite clay for his speech to come up. I'll get that on Amazon right away. Like, it's so absurd that you're just kind of like, whatever. But where it really hurt me, especially with my oldest son, I was very young when I had him, so I felt the pains of it even more, of being a young mom. People really looking at it as it was because I was so young, and maybe it was my age that caused it. Like, maybe it's because I wasn't parenting him right that it caused things, and I didn't know what I was doing. I was just a kid. That was really hard for me early on to get through, and even now I have to like separate myself from it and realize that that was a different time and different people, and that's not what I have to go through and worry about now. So yeah, that I would say that where I was hurt was more people that viewed it as a parenting error versus coming alongside to say like, wow, this is hard stuff right now, and what can we do to help you. But it's something, again, it's something that I've had to grow with and take from, and it's helped shape me into where I am now. But understanding now that not everybody has the worst of intentions either. I mean, people say silly stuff all the time, and I just view it as they don't know or understand, and that's okay. Like, they're not trying to be evil, awful people or anything like that. So
Yeah,
changing my mindset's really helped that.
that's good. Yeah, it can. People when they offer unsolicited parenting advice, ugh, I- yeah,
I
but
think no matter what, you'll get that, whether your kid is autistic or not. People
yeah,
have their ideas of certain ways to do things, and my parenting style has always been very admittedly, I'll do the opposite of what my parents did, and I've stuck to that, and it's been okay. So, but you hear from everybody, they like to give their 2 cents into what's
yeah,
the right way to do things.
yeah, yeah, for sure. So, just my final question. I really appreciate you coming on. I think this is good and getting awareness for those who are watching our podcast. We're still new, but we're trying to just get a lot of different information out there for people to learn what's important in church and how can we help other people and understand different situations. But my final question for you is, what are you doing for fun to help you get through tough times? And how do you find moments of respite? Parents asking them what they do for fun sometimes, no matter what the parent situation is, they're like, oh, I don't do anything for fun. But I hope you are doing something for fun. And if you are, what is it?
So that's kind of where TikTok comes in for me. It's been so therapeutic to be able to have that outlet there. I admit I really don't have the time to go out and do things. I have my kids all the time. I work full time. I'm busy as can be. So it's funny because really that was not even a half joke of like, I would love to just sit in my car for 5 minutes with nobody bothering me. Like, that is the best. There's been many times where I've gotten myself like food on the way home, and the older kids are home, and they'll see me outside, but they know like, just leave her go for a couple minutes, let her have her peace there. I find I've gotten a new appreciation for those little moments like that. But honestly, like I really enjoy having the TikTok. I sound so old. The TikTok. I really right. I am old on TikTok though. It's so funny, honestly, being like considered an old person on the app because there really are kids, young kids on there. But I do enjoy having that outlet. I enjoy, you know, there's a balance to it, but as much as I love posting out there to get awareness out there, I also love seeing my feed is just filled with other families that are also going through it, and just knowing, there's not a lot of families hyper local to me that might be going through what we go through to get that support there. But online, I have some really amazing friends that I've built on there that as I've built my platform, I've been able to learn from so much, things that they're doing, things that help, things that didn't help, just seeing the same struggles and feeling less alone in it. That has been um awesome. It's really been great for me. So that's kind of where I go to.
That's really great. That's really great. I'm glad that you do have those moments in your car, and
About
then
all I get, about all I get, but we love them. Whether it's just
yeah,
a coffee, hanging out for a few. I like whenever the baby falls asleep in the back seat. I just let her nap there. Sometimes we get a little bit longer, so it's great.
that's awesome. Yeah. And I'm so thankful for your platform, and that not only is it helping others, but it's also helping you. That's I don't think everyone thinks that about social media and, platforms, that it's not just for others, or it's not just for notoriety, but it's actually therapy for you and getting connected with people in similar situations. So that's really good insight on that, Madison. I really appreciate you taking time. I know you are a busy, busy, busy woman, with all the stuff that you got going on. So I just thank you for coming on to Cultivating Candor. It has been excellent to talk with you and to get to know how we can better help families with special needs and kids, on the spectrum, especially where Siler's at, and have a little bit more compassion, empathy, and knowledge on how we can walk alongside. So thank you.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. I think it's great, honestly, just taking the time to learn and understand means so much because a lot of people don't. So
Yeah.
appreciate it.
Yep. Thank you so much.